welcome to Seen Through Glass. I've owned this McLaren now for about a month and a half, and seeing as Paul is currently on the hunt for the replacement for his AMG GTS, Seb has just announced that he is buying a new Lotus, and God knows what Shmee 150 and Mr. JWW are going to buy in the future. I thought now would be a kind of relatively good time to sit down and talk to you guys about how I was able to afford a McLaren. I feel like there's this kind of like air of mystery and intrigue around how YouTubers, and specifically us car YouTubers, are able to buy such kind of mad and amazing cars. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to be speaking from personal experience. I have no idea how Paul, James, Seb, Tim, etc. buy their cars, so please don't think I'm speaking on behalf of the group. I'm only talking to you about what I have found buying cars throughout my life. The only way that I would have been able to afford this insane McLaren is through financing. Now, I feel like the word financing has this kind of like weird stigma or embarrassment associated with it, especially on social media. It's like Macbeth, you say it 3 times and you die. Well, I am not ashamed or embarrassed at all. In fact, I am such a fan of financing that I champion it, and that is why I am making this video. Now, I'm going to go on to talk sort of about the various pros and cons of financing, the options, try and give you some sort of examples of car financing. But before I did that, I wanted to give you a little bit of background into my car buying, the cars that I've owned, and how I bought them before I break things down. So, me, I think like many car people, the minute I had my first job, I always put money aside to buy a car. I had this like pot, so as soon as my bills or my mortgage was paid, the rest of the money went into a pot, which was the new car fund. And that meant I was an incredibly antisocial human being. I never went out and did anything because I was always saving money for when I wanted to buy the next car. What a lovely day it is. So the last car that I think I bought in cash through that method of saving up and then going and buying something was probably a 2003 Audi S3, about maybe 5 years ago now. I think I bought it for about £7,500. I'd been saving up, went into a dealership, bought it, and I was like, hell's yeah! And when it came time to sell that car, I had again been saving up, and this time I had £10,000. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be in Forbes' rich list. I honestly thought, I was like, this is the most money I'm ever going to have spent on a car. It's incredible. Went into the Audi dealership again. I was a big fan of Audis and had formed quite a good relationship with the dealer. And the dealer said to me, look, rather than going and blowing £10,000 on a slightly newer S3 or whatever I was thinking of at the time, he said, no, why not use that money, or even just some of that money, as a deposit in a finance agreement? And I was like, oh. I'd always been raised by my parents not really to borrow money, especially not to buy things that you couldn't afford. But the world is changing, and sometimes you have to take your parents' advice with a pinch of salt. 8 in 10 new cars these days are bought with financing. I don't know the stats on the used car market, but I imagine it's got to be very similar. So there was a lot of reasons why it felt very attractive to me. I was in a stable job, I was earning a fixed income, so I knew what I was getting each month. I'd saved up this sort of pot of money for a deposit, and instead of blowing all of the 10 grand that I'd managed to save up on a sort of, you know, as I say, slightly newer S3, I learned that I could spend 2 or 5 of that £1,000 and then a little bit of money each month and be in a brand new TTS. Well, it wasn't a brand new, it was a used TTS, but anyway, you get my point. At 23 years old, or however old I was like, that sounds like a fantastic idea. So that's the route I went. Now, I've learned a lot since then, mainly that a lot of these sort of big manufacturer finance deals aren't often that great, especially when it came to selling. Oh my God, that's a huge truck. Oh, that was a horrible moment. I did not realize how big that truck was until the very last minute. That was horrible. Right, I think it is time to do a U-turn so I can keep talking to you. But yes, as I say, apart from what I learned later on, at the time, it was definitely the right move for me. Being a car obsessive, being able to get into the best car I could was the route to go. So since then, the Alfa 4C, the Jaguar F-Type, and this McLaren have been financed. There are lots and lots of different ways, parking sensor shush, lots and lots of different ways that you can finance. You can part finance cars, you can do a sort of PCP balloon sort of situation where you sort of borrow some of the money and then there's a sort of lump sum at the end which you can choose to pay or give the car back or do whatever. There's a million different options, and I've kind of been through all of them if I'm honest, especially with the 4C, the F-Type and this McLaren. Getting into different cars, you have to look at different ways of doing it. I've been very fortunate though, however, that as time has gone on, I've earned a little bit more, therefore I could afford a little bit more, because as you can imagine, the more expensive the cars become, the more deposit you have to pay and the more you have to pay per month. Because the biggest thing, the most important thing, as I say, which we are going to come back to and speak about when we look at the cons of financing, is being able to afford that monthly payment. I think a lot of people hear car financing and think, oh, gee, you haven't really bought the car. Oh, you know, you don't know what it's like to really buy a car. I think I do, because I have the burden of a monthly payment. And trust me, the monthly payment on this car keeps me wide awake at night sweating, trying to work out how I'm going to raise the money. It is not an easy thing, but to me, firstly, I don't have hundreds of £1,000s tucked away that I can just put into fundamentally depreciating assets. That was always the biggest thing for me. Why would I want to pay 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, £100,000, tie that up in a car that is going to be going down in value? Now I know there are obviously cars out there which can appreciate, but that's a bit of a sort of luck game. You can't guarantee it. So you've got to expect that your money you put in is going to go down. Whilst alternatively, I can basically spread those payments. Now, it is essential that, as I say, you can afford those payments. And as time went on, I earned a little bit more, so instead of putting £200, £300, £500 aside to save up some cash for the next purchase, I was using that £200, £300, £500 to pay finance payments. So it remained within my budget, and it's money that I would have been spending on a car in some way anyway. I always tried to make sure that I was never going to kind of going crazy and spending money that I just simply couldn't afford, because I hate that. I hate owing anyone money, full stop, and I hate fixed monthly outgoings, but I love cars. So it kind of made sense that that was always going to be the route that I went. Now, as I say, there are a number of different ways that you can finance cars in the UK. One thing I want to touch on very briefly is leasing, car leasing. Now, for me personally, and all of this is personal opinion, you can go at it in a million different ways, whatever works for you. But leasing never really appealed to me, because with leasing, a company buys the car and effectively rents it to you. For me personally, it was never really an option. I was always looking at financing. So after the Audi TTS, I used an independent finance broker called Magnitude, who are supercar specialists, but part of DSG, who are major car financiers in the UK. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a huge number of cons to financing. As I've mentioned quite a few times, you have to be able to afford the monthly payment. There is no point in doing it if you don't have a fixed income of some sort. If you can't afford the payments, you are screwed. The bank will take the car back, your credit rating will be a nightmare, and it will just be the worst day of your life. So do not go in there and go, oh, £500 a month, I can afford that, if you can't. Secondly, there is the chance that you will pay more over a 3 or 4 year period than if you bought the car cash. If you take a £100,000 car, for example, you may buy it and in 3 years' time it's worth £65,000, therefore you have lost £35,000. If you finance that car in some way because of interest payments and, again, depreciation, there is a chance you will pay more than that. You have to be aware. But it may be that financially, in terms of delaying payment and spreading those payments out, it works better for you, as it does for me. But I do not see it as a, you don't own the car, you haven't bought the car correctly. My name is still on the V5 document. Trust me, as a financial commitment, it is always huge, because I push the very limit of what I can afford, whether that's deposit or whether that is monthlies. I always push the limit, and it's fair to say that, You don't always need to put huge deposits, but the bigger the deposit, the better. It gives you more breathing room between the debt and the actual value of the car. So when you come to sell, you hopefully won't be near that negative equity at all, and you should get your deposit back. But you've got to be clever, and that's where someone like Tim at Magnitude is amazing, because he helps build a deal that is financially sensible as borrowing money can be. So many people finance cars all over the world, but you know, especially in the UK, and it's nothing that I think should be ashamed of. And also, the kind of main reason I want to talk about this is that I see a lot of you guys comment, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever, or even YouTube comments saying, what is your job? How do you afford these cars? What do you do? And obviously, you aren't going to get anywhere when it comes to buying a new car without hard work. You've got to work hard. Financing is not an escape. It's not like a easy way to get an amazing car, because you still have to have money for the deposit and money for the monthlies. As I said, the monthlies for this car are terrifying. But that is not only an incentive for me to work, but also a reason for me to work. And you have to work very, very hard. But at the same time, I don't want you all thinking that the only way you can buy a crazy supercar is to be a millionaire, or have a very rich dad, or be a YouTuber, because YouTube does not make you an overnight millionaire. It does not mean, oh, I'll start up a channel, get 100,000 subscribers and be able to buy a supercar. Lots of people have lots of different ways of making money. And as long as you can make the money to afford the deposit and the payments, then why does it matter that you're doing it that way and not buying the car in cash? I personally think it's a more sensible way to buy a car. Lots of you will disagree, but for me, rather than tying up huge lumps of sum in a depreciating asset, I think spreading the money over a period, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, is a more sensible route to go. Even if you end up paying a little bit more, I have to say. It's how we buy houses. It is how we buy houses. Oh, this thing is so quick. I have well broken in this car now, and whilst the weather has been atrocious, I'm looking for any excuses to absolutely thrash it. Woo! Anyway, I realise this has been a bit of a rambly, sort of wordy, long video, and I probably should have done it in front of a whiteboard to be able to explain some more. But it's just something I kind of wanted to get off my chest and be open and honest about. And a lot of you may judge me for it. A lot of you may be negative and think it was the wrong thing to do. But at the end of the day, I've got nothing to hide, nothing I'm ashamed or embarrassed about. And as I say, I am so grateful and thankful for Magnitude, really, for doing what they do and doing it so well, and being able to help and guide me and teach me this mad world of car financing. Anyway, I hope you kind of enjoyed it. I hope it's given you some insight. Give it a thumbs up if it has, and make sure to subscribe for plenty more videos to come.